Hello, y'all. It is, what is it, Sunday, August 4th. It is time for Throwing Light. I am LTJ Reeves, and if you're not throwing light, you're not acting right. Before I get started, remember, y'all, Ashwell is something that's very important to me, and they helped inspire me to continue doing these shows. So if you could please visit ashwellatx.org. They're a local organization that helps provide resources to our community, including resources in mental health, STD testing, things like that. Just support overall. They also have a food bank, so if you want to donate food to help them to continue to make our community be supported and thrive, please do that too. AshevilleATX.org. So our guest tonight is going to be Mr. Louisiana Leather 2024, Jimmy Gale, my IML brother in New Orleans, Louisiana. I am so excited to be doing this. Jimmy, how are you? What's up?
I'm good. It's hot and humid here, but I'm good. Just we're getting ready for Decadence, getting ready for the Mr. Louisiana Leather contest, and returning to life post IML, trying to
Like,
figure out what that means.
but man, being a leather person and then being in New Orleans, man, it looks so exciting. I get jealous. I'm like, man, I need to be over there because it's mixed with all the Mardi Gras aspects to everything that you're doing and all the crews and the different things. And it just, when I come back to Louisiana, and now that I know you and I know Paree, it's just such a joyous time. I don't know how to explain it, but why don't you let everybody know, where you're at, what your titles have been, and what has been your doorway into the community.
Well, sure. So, hey, everybody, my name is Jimmy Gale. I use he, him pronouns, and I am very fortunate to have lived in New Orleans for almost 5 years. This October will be my fifth anniversary, and it was the best decision I ever made. I'm originally from the San Francisco Bay Area, where I first was introduced to leather, and I have worked in the field of HIV prevention and care for almost 16 years. And that's what brought me to New Orleans. I had dreamt of coming here my whole life and finally had the opportunity to come to an HIV biomedical conference here in New Orleans and fell in love with this city and ended up coming out here every other month for 2 years until a friend of mine in our local Big Easy Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence looked at me and said, "Bitch, just move." And I'm the first person in my entire family to ever leave the Bay Area. So it was scary and terrifying, but it was the best decision I ever made. And New Orleans has been so exceptionally kind to me. I realized really early on when you're good to the city, she's good back to you. And New Orleans has been kinder than I could have ever asked. And in my short time here, I have been elevated and celebrated and recognized by my local community in so many ways. Last year, I was one of the Southern Decadence Grand Marshals. Most people wait their entire lives living here in New Orleans for that to happen, but I'd only been here 3 years. Um, I was Mr. Mobile Leather last year, Mr. Louisiana Leather. I was made a saint by the Big Easy Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence after I helped vaccinate over 9,000 people for Mpox and earned the nickname Mr. Everything. Um, and I'm really fortunate to be super involved with our local community here, both our leather clubs, our fetish clubs, our Mardi Gras crews, and just being being as involved as I can. So by day, I work in public health, and by night, I bartend at the New Orleans Phoenix, New Orleans' only leather, bear, and fetish bar, and it's been a great experience. That's me.
And were you like nominated for like 6 community awards right now or something like that?
Yeah. Yes, I did win. We have our locally, we have the Gay Appreciation Awards that come out every year, where community members go online and nominate folks for a couple dozen different categories. Last year, I won Gay Man of the Year, which was very surreal. Didn't know you can get an award for that. And this year, I'm nominated in 5 categories as well. And there are so many folks doing incredible work and incredible advocacy and just adding to the culture and the energy of this amazing city that I'm really in good company with the other nominees. So it's just an honor to be nominated. I'm
It's
very
so
excited.
exciting getting to see this stuff happen to you. I look so forward to you. We'll get a little bit later about our reunion, but I just sit here and I talk about you. And I'm like, my brother here got top 20, y'all. Like when you hear all the stuff he's doing, it's beautiful. Jimmy is, like I said, right now my way of trying to keep a connection with my IMO brothers and siblings and is the like using this platform, for example. It's a way
Yeah.
to at least connect, let y'all know I still love y'all, all that type of stuff. But we're all busy doing things. Sometimes I'm not that great in keeping up with our chats and the WhatsApp. I try to do
Okay,
that.
it's not just me. Like
No,
I
I have
forget about
notifications.
it.
So I know that's the only thing that I have loud notifications
Yeah.
on is our IML group
Yeah.
chat. So at least I know. I try to stay
Yeah.
in the conversation or know of what's going on. And when I can, I speak. But we're going to start doing these. The IML meetups every other month now. So I'm going to
Yeah.
do that until our that what I consider
Amazing.
all step down at IML next year from our class. So
I love that.
really cool. So yeah, so I'm gonna do that. And that way I get to, keep our light going because all of us are still doing things. We've got Tyree just got World Bear, Tyree's gonna be on the show. Like, we're still doing things, and it's nice
Yeah.
to it's kind of a catch up and to see if if we maintain the momentum since IML. But we'll come all back to that. So Jimmy, let's see, what we're going to talk about. We have a few things to talk about. Well, the biggest thing is that your step down is going to be on August 31st.
Mhm.
Um,
It's the day before the Southern Decadence
Yes,
Parade.
it's
It's a busy
Decadence,
weekend.
Decadence weekends. I'm also going to be having another Louisiana Word Show on September 1st. I'll be telling the community about that and getting support because we're going to be looking for readers. And it's
Yeah.
great now to start using our community powers to uplift. And like I said, Louisiana's right now is a LTBG QIA plus organization that supports writers within the state of Louisiana and our main focus is that we're choosing creativity over violence, basically. So we'll get more in that. I'm going to need you, Jimmy, as I pioneer this across the state. But going back to things that you're doing, so your step down is coming. You have been Mr. Louisiana Leather, okay? How has that journey been for you? Now, before
You
actually,
know, I
before you say that,
go
wait,
ahead.
wait. You were Mr. Mobile Leather first. Why
Mhm.
do we want to start there? Could you say Bay Area? Where are you talking about?
Yes.
Because you're going to confuse
So
people. Is it San Francisco you're talking about?
I worked in San Francisco and I lived in the East Bay. So I worked on Castro Street at a gay men's health center, but I commuted in and out every single day. Yeah.
Okay, because I didn't know if you were like talking like Mobile, Alabama Bay. I didn't know if that's what you
Yeah.
were talking about because you said so. Let's start with Mr. Mobile Leather. Let's go there, then we'll come to
Yeah.
Mr. Louisiana Leather.
So I have been interested in leather and fetish since I was little. I came out of the closet at 13 and I snuck off to the gay pride parade in San Francisco, made up a lie, didn't tell my mom where I was going. But one of my friend's moms found out that I went and she's like, okay, well, you've seen the bright, sparkly, glittery gay events. There's another side I need you to see. And so Mrs. Goldsby, who looks a little bit like Mrs. Doubtfire, took me at 13 years old to my first Folsom Street Fair. And I'll be fair, I was already 6'2". I already had a little beard going. And it opened my eyes to this whole nother world and seeing all of these beautiful and diverse men and diverse bodies like really inspired me to, get involved as I became of age. But the flip side of that is that I never really saw people that looked like me and had my body type as a title holder. And so I never thought I would do anything like this. And so last year, with all of the peak craziness of being Southern Decadence Grand Marshal, I looked at my calendar and realized there was a weekend where I had no fundraisers, no speaking engagements, I wasn't bartending. And so me and one of my best friends, we went out to Mobile's Bear Leather Weekend just to get out of town. And while we were there, I'm sitting at Gabriel's Bub and having a drink, and they slapped a piece of paper in front of me and said, we'll see you in 15 minutes for interviews. And they ran out the door. And I was like, what are you talking about? And so I ran over there and I'm like, what is this? And like, we've entered you in the contest. I was like, I don't, what? Go get your stuff. And I was just in a blur, and I ran and grabbed my duffel bag with all my gear, and I came back and I got thrown into this contest, and I didn't think about like everything that it would entail, but I'm like, you know what? I'm always down to support. They're raising money for charity. I'm just going to have fun with this. And I went up there and I was myself and I won. And then they told me as I was getting my sash that, by the way, now you're going to be competing in Mr. Louisiana Leather. And I was like, that is the day before my parade. It's not like I have nothing else going on, but okay, let's do it. And I'm really glad that I followed through on it. I never thought I would ever be a leather title holder, that I would do anything like IML, because in my mind, I didn't fit that mold. I don't like, I'm not rippling with muscles. I'm not covered in tribal tattoos. I am just me. I like glitter and leather. I didn't think that that would be my world. But competing in Mr. Louisiana Leather, there were 9 of us in our competition last year, an incredibly diverse group of people, and every single one of them would have done an incredible job at IML. So I'm grateful for that opportunity. And being able to meet so many of our IML siblings and go all across the Gulf Coast to share my story as a person living with HIV and my journey in leather, and talk about like my sexual assault and how all of this was kind of a healing moment for me. I'm so grateful that I did it. Um, and I really came out of that IML experience like feeling more comfortable and confident in my identity as a leather person. Um, because walking into that room and seeing everybody and seeing people that did look like me and seeing those same people do incredibly well, it really reinforced that there is no mold for what a leather person is, and that every single member of our class brought something unique and exciting and creative to it. So it's made me really take a step back and take a deeper look at the community around me and think about mentoring and think about supporting people and encouraging them to get more involved with our local leather clubs, because we have quite a few and they're all wonderful. So it was something I never thought I would do. And look at me now. And I did it. I'm very proud of it.
That's amazing. That's such a great story to hear all those great things. Let me see here. So what has been some of the favorite work that you've gotten to do in the community as Mr. Louisiana Leather? You know, like you are in New Orleans, and I don't, you know, a lot of people's perception of Louisiana is New Orleans, which I tell people those are
Yeah.
two vastly different things. New Orleans and Louisiana are
Yeah.
not the same thing. New
No.
Orleans
It's like a
is,
different country.
don't get me wrong, New Orleans is a if you don't know what you're doing, it can be dangerous. New Orleans can be a
Oh
dangerous,
yeah.
okay? Like you definitely, it's not the city that there are just certain parts you don't want to be walking along. Things happen, you know, and it does have that reputation, but it also has a reputation for being very inviting.
Yeah.
The community being very welcoming. Um, have zero problem if they want you to ask some questions about where's good food, where should I go hang out.
Right.
They want to set you up for success when you get to New Orleans, and that's the energy.
Hmm.
Like I can't tell you, I love every Uber ride I get from the airport to my hotel when I get to New Orleans, because whoever the Uber driver is, baby, we got
Yeah.
music going on. We're having a conversation. What you like to eat? What's going on? Oh, you here for this festival? Like they know what's going on. It is amazing. I tell you,
Hmm.
everybody contributes in New Orleans, even the homeless community contributes, because a lot of times they are on the streets doing the entertainment. They're trying to make a living. So
Yeah.
it's a city that everyone contributes. And I don't know how to explain that to anybody, but New Orleans is my favorite small city, where New York is my favorite large city. So and I'll stand by that. Like it's not that I'm biased to Louisiana because I grew up there, but New Orleans is a beautiful experience, and it's vibrant. It offers so many opportunity to be seen there, and all the local
Mhm.
crews and Mardi Gras. You just have so much going on there, and it's more than just Bourbon Street.
Way more.
How has being so being Miss Louisiana, or like, what about outside of New Orleans? What has been, have you been able to network any or reach out to smaller cities or maybe North Louisiana or anything like that?
I was able to do a bit of traveling this year. And with my work, I do get to travel all over the state and talk to local clinics and local community members. We're working on building a network of people living with HIV. Right now, that's one of our biggest tasks that I'm helping with. And going out there, and like anytime I travel, I always bring a few pieces of leather with me in case I'm able to go out. And even going out to Baton Rouge, they have three, four, maybe five LGBTQ plus bars now. Not a lot of leather. Four. Thank you so much. And there's not a lot of opportunities for it. And even like during the year, with all of the publicity and promotion that I got, I was getting a lot of messages from folks in the farthest reaches of the state trying to find ways to build more leather community locally. How do they get involved? Instead of having to drive hours and hours to get to New Orleans to meet like-minded folks and to really hone in on their kinks and their fetishes, how do you find that local community and foster it in a supportive way? And Louis, that not all folks involved in leather and fetish are supportive people. There's not everybody's a good guy, and sometimes they take advantage. So fostering people with the knowledge of consent and ownership of their bodies and feeling comfortable, that was something that I really enjoyed doing over the years, was talking to people I've never met in person. Half the time they don't even have a face on their profile because they're so very much in the closet about their identity and who they are and what they like. But kind of holding their hand through this exploration and kind of pinpointing suggestions on ways they can meet folks, I really appreciated that. um, I did get to go a lot through Mississippi and Alabama and meet folks, even going to Pensacola a few times to support Mr. Roundup out there. Um, it was really cool to make those connections and see the differences in the local leather cultures. Because, like you said, New Orleans, there's always something going on. We always have a costume to make, we always have a parade or a party we're preparing for. And New Orleans is really good to you when you're good to her. Um, but as you said, New Orleans isn't good for everybody. And there's a lot of people that fall into that trap. So seeing the experiences along the Gulf Coast and how folks, feel that they fit into this bigger picture and this community as a whole was really eye-opening for me as a transplant. Growing up in San Francisco, going to Folsom Street Fair, going to Dory Alley, hanging out in the back room at the Powerhouse every other Tuesday. It was a very different world than what I found down here. So navigating that is tricky for a lot of people.
Man, Jimmy, there's so much to talk about. Because this is going to, because there's so much I still want to talk to you about. Okay, so what I want to hit on is that my sexual assault happened in New Orleans. So New Orleans, it started
Yeah.
out as a dark journey for me, but I go back.
Hmm.
I can be in the city, and none of those triggers are there. I've overcome all that. It's a wonderful thing. I can go, and I'm like, oh my god, I'm here in New Orleans. I can say no. I can pick who people I want to hang out with. I can contribute. Like, I don't have to do anything I don't want to do, and I can keep myself in safe environments because I know better when I go to New Orleans because I've been there so many times. Um, I had Fareeb on the show back in February, and we talked about me potentially, being somewhat reluctant to go back to my hometown of Monroe, Louisiana.
Yeah.
Being that, to me, it would be really hard for me to convince that there are many people that have evolved like me at this reach where they have social media and they can see what I'm going. I'm the only one from my senior year class, or my year, that is living a life that is this. I'm owning my life. I'm figuring things out. I'm making mistakes. I'm making wins. I'm doing all this. And I'm hoping that I can inspire those places. Like, I grew up in the Bible Belt where they're so fearful of everything, even descriptions of sex. And sometimes as Leatherman, and especially being in the LGBT community, because they politicize their sexualities, those are things that are pulled in front of us. It's not that we choose to lead with that, that's what we're being discriminated for. And so it makes it a discussion, and we don't have control over that. And it's not fair that we have to just be like, hey, can we keep what we want to do in our homes, our business, just like you want to keep what you are doing on in your business? Or if we want to have it out in public in a space that we can all feel safe, we should be allowed to do those things. And it's not just a gay thing. I mean, straight people do these same things too. It doesn't make any sense. They're just
Yeah.
not. They're disguised more, I would say, and into being more what we say a part of your norm. You know what I'm saying? The societal.
Well, I mean, I feel that like here in Louisiana, specifically with the work that I do every day, we live in a state that I live in a state, you're from a state that doesn't really believe in sexual health education. A
Right.
lot of these young people, a lot of these adults that are our age never had sex ed.
Right.
I meet people in their 40s and 50s that were never told how to use a condom. I'm meeting people that are living with HIV and they've been positive for over 30 years, and they're just now learning about U equals U, undetectable equals untransmittable, because those messages are not being shared. And it's very stigmatizing. And being in a very conservative state, they're legislating morality. This is a deeply religious state, very conservative. New Orleans is a blue bubble in a sea of red. And it's really hard to make movements and make progress to really get folks to take a step back, take a deep breath, and realize that we're all human beings, and human beings do things that make them feel good, whether that's food, shopping, drinking, drugs, sex, you name it. We're doing things that make us feel good. We're no different than anybody else, but maybe a little kinkier than some. But there's nothing wrong with it. But having those conversations and trying to, I created a training as part of my job. It's called Sex Positivity, and it's meant for clinical folks in healthcare settings across the state to get them to kind of unclench a little bit. And how do you appropriately respond when a client comes in to get tested or comes in for services and they bring up what their sex life is like? How do you respond in a positive way that's affirming of their identity and of what they're doing with their bodies, and not come across as judgmental or stigmatizing? Because the moment you judge somebody in a clinical space, they're probably not coming back. And Louisiana ranks dead last in terms of health outcomes. We're 50th in the nation. The worst health in the entire country is right here in Louisiana.
And that's
So we have a lot of work to do, and it's hard.
Louisiana
It's
will
really
never
hard.
be able to progress if we're putting ideology before science and facts and things like that. And
Right.
it's not practical, the things that religious communities do. I know that
Mm-hmm.
they might think that they're doing something right, but oppressing people and taking the rights and education or keeping people from educating themselves is the opposite of pro-life. And I
Right.
struggle with that because you have people that are in the state that they try to say that's their prime reason for why they want to vote, red or whatever, the foolery. And it's just you're not taking care of the kids and giving these homes. Are you in a very, and what's not a very racist state too? Okay, do you have a problem adopting a black baby? Do you have a problem with that?
Right.
Because that's pro-life. You know what I'm saying? I grew up in
Well,
that.
even the day that we had our interviews during IML, because you and I, we were in different groups, but we were on the same day. That day, well, I was waiting in an interview room. That's when news broke that our governor had pushed it through that every classroom in the state of Louisiana would have the Ten Commandments posted.
I know that's crazy.
And I remember like getting the notification on my phone, and I'm like, not today. I'll deal with this when I get home. And
Yeah.
it's kind of crazy that this is something that happened. It makes no sense.
No, that's
Yeah.
ridiculous. that's brainwashing, and it doesn't make any sense. And it's just that we can sit here in this conversation, but nobody that truly wants to make a difference is not going to ask questions. And if you're just following along, and the things that they're worshiping people at the end of the day, nothing at these people that I'm just going to say, if it's not intentional, you're not helping. You're not helping the world.
Right.
Being like denying people the right to live. Like that is not right. That is
Right.
not right. And you know, there are crazy things. We've got conversion camps in northern Louisiana. I'm not crazy. We know that.
Mhm.
You know, we got all kinds of weird stuff in there, and it is weird because it goes back to those
Yeah.
weird Puritan like witch type days and things like that. But to end my idea for the thing is that going back to Monroe is still a struggle for me because you
Yeah.
know there's zero like you know it obviously has to be super difficult to be trans there. So
Right.
you know, I would love to join you in the future in terms of helping make an impact in Louisiana because it needs it, and I think that we might be in a good position this year for our community to move forward in a way where we can, you know, take the Ten Commandments back out of the classroom because that's ridiculous.
Well, I
Jimmy,
think one of the biggest things right now is like voter everything.
that too.
With the big election coming up in November, this last year when it came time for the governor's election of Louisiana technically has more registered Democrats than
Yes.
they do Republicans. But statewide, only 30% eligible voters bothered to vote in the governor's election. And in Orleans Parish, only 27% of eligible voters bothered to show up. And in Orleans Parish, the other guy won by a landslide. If 60% of Orleans Parish voters had showed up and voted, we would have a very different governor in office right now. And so that's one thing that I'm working on with some friends. Last year, I did LGBTQ voter registration, and I designed stickers that have like a rainbow Louisiana in it that says registered and ready. And we were doing voter registration at all the bars for a couple of months to get people ready and get them prepared for that election. And now more than ever, we're going to mobilize again. I got a couple rolls of those stickers left. So we're going to get back out into the bars, back out into these community events, and just start talking to people about how important their voice is and how important it is to vote top down on the election. Every single candidate, every single initiative, you need to fill in every box to make sure that your voice is heard because studies have shown that a lot of times Democrats vote for the big ticket item and then they walk out of the booth. But who doesn't just fill in the one thing, who has all the time in the world to vote for everything down to your public library? The conservative folks. So we want to make sure that everybody's aware of what's on the ballot and getting involved in whatever feels comfortable. I'll be honest, clearly I have some thoughts on things based on my t-shirt available at Bourbon Pride. But I just want people to vote. Like I have that day off from work. I'm going to spend the entire day on election day driving people to and from the polls in my little Toyota Corolla, because that is going to be an important part of changing the state, changing minds, opening up doors for communities of color, for trans folks, for queer folks, for low income folks, for people who use drugs. Like these voices and these votes really make a difference.
I am on board with you. I just, you know, like I want longevity in Louisiana, and I think after my step down for a year, as I pivot to be more of an influence in the state, I just I mean, you're a powerhouse, and I just think that if we see there's places that work can be done and we can do it,
Yeah.
I say why not be the trendsetters. So generally, Jimmy, I would ask someone or ask my guest towards the end of the show if there's anything else that
Yeah.
you want to talk about, but we hit voting pretty well.
Yeah.
Is there anything else, Jimmy, that you think maybe in our community that we are not shedding enough light on that we haven't talked about?
I mean, clearly my passion is around sexual health and harm reduction. One of my biggest initiatives during my time as Mr. Louisiana Leather was I was doing overdose reversal trainings for all of the local clubs, going from bar to bar and training people on how to use Narcan or naloxone, especially with big events like Southern Decadence coming in. Sometimes, some years we have 500,000 people fly into New Orleans, and with them, they're bringing their substances of choice. And not everybody's prepared to jump in and make a difference and potentially save someone's life. I think the health and wellness of our community is oftentimes overlooked. So making sure that folks are, going to the doctor, getting tested, getting treated, and getting services where they feel seen, supported, and celebrated. That's the biggest thing. And it's hard. Even in healthcare settings, even in health departments, there's still increasing levels of racism and homophobia and transphobia, and specifically around people who use drugs. Like there is so much stigma behind it. So it's really up to us. And, I know, Louis, you're very outspoken about your recovery journey and all of the work that you have done as a survivor and as like a role model in that. So using your voice and your experience, and I'll use my voice and my experience. And I just think that we're not, we lost so many of our community members due to a public health crisis in the 80s. I don't want to see that happen again. I want our folks to be vaccinated. I want our folks to be taken care of and to have these conversations. And talking about sex and talking about testing isn't always a sexy thing, because we have stigmatized being a sex positive person so much, but we really gotta normalize it and remove that stigma and just use our platform as community leaders and sexual assault survivors to talk about, this is the reality, and your health and your future matters. That's an important thing for me.
Awesome, Jimmy. Beautiful. I mean, like, just it makes like all due respect, like I love you. I think you're amazing. I'm looking forward to having you in my life and us spawning closer. But like you getting top 20, this interview, everything, you is so well deserved. You know what? You know what? You got recognition. It doesn't matter what the placement was, and you deserve the recognition that you got. And I just want to let you
Right.
know that
Well, and
beautiful.
I know there were so many people that those days leading up to the big night, in my head, I had made a list of the 20 people I wanted to see up there, not because they had the coolest leather, because they had the hottest bodies, because they were genuinely good, kind, and creative people. And as they were calling the top 20, I was so busy clapping and cheering for my friends that I didn't even realize that they had called my name. And in that moment, everything stopped. And I'm so grateful to have had the opportunity to give my speech, and talk about how, being sexually assaulted, and subsequently diagnosed with HIV, and how leather saved me. A small piece of leather was that touchstone that got me through the hardest days. And while leather is, sexy and fun, it also means something more to folks. And for folks like you and I that have experienced real trauma, and real pain within our community, it can be like armor too. I feel strong, and I stand taller when I have my gear on. And so to have that experience and share that with you, you were the first person I saw on check-in day in the lobby. And I'm so glad that it was you, because I was about to have a panic attack. I was so nervous. And then I saw you. And we got to check in on those white couches before they hid them away, before all the leather pigs showed up.
Oh,
And I'm
oh,
grateful for that. And to have that moment, in this incredible whirlwind competition. And it was great to have a friend there. It made me feel better.
it would when they called your name, I cheer. I love everyone, don't get me wrong, but I
Yeah.
didn't care anything else in that moment but being excited for you, and it was so cool because the thing too, what people have to understand, like I don't think that placements anyone can ever predict what the placements are going to be. You can well, but like it just it's how it lands. That's how we have that moment to show who we are, and it's just all about like everyone has their strengths, and I think IMO helps you kind of figure out what those are,
Yeah.
and she kind of set you up for a future if you want to recognize what you either
Yeah.
have to bring to the table or what else you can bring to the table. So, like I said, IMO is a contest of winners. I've said this, but I do want a good relationship with my brothers and my non-binary family. And my thing is that it's just finding ways to keep that connection. I'm not always the best, like I said, in terms of being on my cell phone having conversations. So, I'm trying to see who's where and there. And, I got to go to Dory last weekend and I saw a good bit of people. I would have liked to spend a little bit more time. I'm not good at parties, really, to be honest.
Hmm.
I learned a lot that going to San Francisco, and it's something I did kind of. I'm going to just go ahead and have this conversation with you. Is that San Francisco was a lot for me as a person that has overcome sobriety.
Yeah.
I had a guy. It just sometimes I felt really out of place. I'll just be honest with you, and I was struggling with it because I'm trying to fight that. And I've even had a mentor tell me like, "Oh, Lewis, your sobriety isn't everyone else's responsibility." I'm like, why is a mentor telling me that I can't be vocal about wanting being in a space and
Right.
saying that we don't need to have crystal meth in it. We don't need to have coke in it.
Yeah.
We don't they don't have to be we don't have to enable, we don't have to perpetuate. If anybody wants to do anything outside our safe spaces, that's fine. But
Hmm.
like there's certain things that we need to draw a line. I'm not saying that, oh, way out. That's not what I'm saying. But if we know that certain drugs are going to cause someone to freaking have an overdose in their bar, and then do we want to? We shouldn't have to be going to have Narcan training classes. To be honest with you, that shouldn't be the direction we have to go in. But we have to because we're saying, oh, well, it's here. This is how we're.
Right.
I felt when I was in San Francisco, everything was magnified, and I'm in Texas where it's just not that. And I'm trying to understand how to be an ally all over the nation and all over the world. And
Yeah.
I just think in that setting, in a place that has so much gay culture and concentrated in one area, being inside of that at one time is kind of a pressure cooker for me. And I think the contest was a little bit like that too. It makes me start questioning, do I fit in? Do I not fit in? Can I tolerate this? Am I strong enough? All those kind of
Right.
conversations were going on in my head. So I think I do my best when I have something to do within the community and I'm there doing something. But in terms of standing around and watching our culture, I think there's so many beautiful aspects of it, but there's so much that we're turning a blind eye to. Is that the right phrase?
Yeah.
I just wish that we would
Yeah.
acknowledge those things and at least be realistic that if we want to be our strongest, we can't have statistics of higher drug use than the average person. Like it's that
Well,
we have to.
it's true. I mean, I always tell people, I get offered stuff all the times. I got offered stuff at IML, and I was like, I'm sorry, I'm a vodka and poppers kind of gal. That's it. That's as hard as I get. And considering I do harm reduction work, it's, the neighborhood I grew up in, my dad struggled with substance use. My younger brother did. I watched what it did to the families around me, so it never was exciting. And then going into our IML journey and learning how many sober leather folks were in our class and kind of reframing it, because we were having our Zoom calls together, to kind of prepare and like support each other leading up to the big contest. And I didn't realize how many of the conversations were centering around drinking and, going out to the bars. And it made me take a step back to realize, like, oh, wait, we have sober leather folks in this club. We need to shift our conversations to create spaces where folks feel comfortable. And, Dory Alley, much like Decadence, a lot of tourists are there. It's not necessarily the San Francisco energy that you were feeling, it's all this tourist energy. And it makes it really hard to kind of hold on to yourself in the peak, the depths of it as everything's going on. And I will say I loved all of my friends back in San Francisco were texting me photos of Dory as it was happening. And in half of the photos in the background, I saw one of our IML siblings, mostly Moshiel. He was in like every photo.
Yeah.
And it made me really happy to see those worlds colliding. but it is really tricky. And, and so much of our community and our culture as leather folks, as like kinksters, our events center around the bars, and that's been a safe space for queer folks for decades. Is when we couldn't be out in public with who we are, they retreated to these dark bars to find a chosen family, and things are changing. You don't necessarily have to go to a bar to make a lifelong friendship. um, it's how we support our sober friends and our sober siblings and attaining that goal and maintaining that goal, because sobriety is a really tricky journey, and it can be very triggering. The smallest thing can set you off, and then there's the shame that you deal with after the fact. So, and I know, like, you're coming to New Orleans for Decadence. You're going to be one of the judges at Mr. Louisiana Leather,
Yes.
and it's going to be wild and crazy here too. So, like, and like, you can text and call me, like, if those feelings come up for you then, because at the end of the day, community is about uplifting each other.
Well, pretty much. That's
And
the
you can't
word.
spell community without unity. Like, we got to stick together. We have to uplift each other.
I am 100% planning on spending a lot of time with you when I come in because yeah, so I mean I'm excited about that. So yeah, I'm going to be around you, so I don't need to worry about that. Okay, so cool. Jimmy, because my step down is coming, yours is there. I get to be there. I get to help pick the next Miss Louisiana Leather. I'm thinking about you. I'm
Yes.
thinking about Parib as I help, choose the next person. I just want to say I'm looking forward to that. I think that's about all I got. I do want to invite you to come back sooner than later back on the show.
Please.
Talk about what our work's going to look like after our step down, and we'll talk about some of that stuff when I see you. But other than that, just thank you so much for being on here, Jimmy, and everyone that's watching. Remember, if you're not throwing light, you're not acting right. Bye, y'all.